Muslims out there who are trying to kill us all. Where does that come from? She said it on mainstream media, unchallenged, unacceptable. Then we got Tommy Robinson, Majid Nawaz. Before that, Anjem Chowdhury was given a platform for years. And then they wonder how his message got out. And why now the rest of us are being blamed for his actions. Unacceptable. Please stop looking at the Muslim community like a suspect community. Scrap Prevent. I was in a meeting with somebody from the Home Office, and I said it's unacceptable that you launch this top-down strategy without any discussion with the Muslim community. That was a few months ago. And he said, we're talking to you now, aren't we? I said, Prevent wasn't introduced 12 years ago. What do you mean you're talking to me now? Absolute nonsense. If you want to talk to me before you launch a strategy, not 12 years after, when we see Muslims suffering from it day in, day out, in schools, in colleges, in workplaces, kids as young as the age of 4. It's unacceptable. Prevent needs to be scrapped. If you want to talk and engage with the Muslim community, talk to us with dignity. Don't treat us like second-class citizens, alright? And as for everything else, these attacks are unfortunately going to increase. Acid is now a new weapon in the armory. And if we keep going down the same road, I'm really worried. I'll give you one final example. I know there's plenty of other speakers. Mohsin Ahmed and Muhammad Salim were slaughtered on the streets of the United Kingdom. How much do people outside the Muslim community know about those people? 80-year-old gentlemen on their way to and from the mosque. One was stabbed, one was beaten to death. How much coverage did that get? Did that get the wall-to-wall coverage of Westminster and others? No, it didn't. What's the reason for that? The mainstream media need to ask the question. And if I'm a Joe Public and I'm receiving that message on the radio, in the news, day in, day out, well, of course I'm going to blame the Muslims for everything. I don't blame the general public. In fact, I'm surprised it's not worse by now. It's terrible. And honestly, if it doesn't change, there's going to be another 80-year-old and an 8-year-old who's going to die on the streets of London or Manchester or somewhere else. And to be frank, the politicians, the media, need to take their fair share of the blame. So something needs to change, and it needs to change quickly, because frankly, enough is enough. Thank you.
Just before I call our next speaker, I'd like to read out a message from Stephen Timms MP for East Ham, who is chairing a meeting in the House of Commons and wanted to come but couldn't get out of that commitment. Stephen says, I would like to thank all those involved in organising tonight's vigil. I apologise that due to commitments in the House of Commons, I am unable to be present. I am deeply troubled by the spate of acid attacks in Newham. My deepest sympathies are with the victims as well as their friends and families. Last night, together with other London MPs, I met with the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police Service at New Scotland Yard. I sought assurances from her about how seriously the force are taking these appalling attacks, which is known in our area, which is known as being one of the most open and welcoming communities in the world. She assured me that the most recent attack is now being vigorously investigated as a hate crime. I will be working with Lynn Brown MP and other colleagues in the House of Commons over the coming weeks to force ministers to consider more stringent controls on the sale of noxious substances. We need to ensure that local residents can again move freely around our area without fear of attack. Thanks. I would now like to ask Roxana Fiaz, who's a Labour councillor in Newham, to speak and say some words. Thank you very much, Roxana.
Hi everyone, and it's really amazing to see so many people united come together to take a stand and to demonstrate their solidarity with two individuals who have experienced what all of us can only imagine to be a really horrific crime. The reason I'm particularly interested in this, notwithstanding my deep commitment and long-standing commitment against racism and any form of anti-Muslim hatred, is because the attack took place in my ward that I represent. So it took place on Tollgate Road in Custom House Ward in the south of this borough. And I'm standing here to say loud and clear to every single member of the Custom House community and the wider Newham community that we will not tolerate any form of hate, any form of racism, any form of victimisation, and any form of harassment. Any due to their religious affiliation or the colour of their skin. And I stand here on behalf of Custom House residents to send our solidarity to Resham and her cousin Jamil for the pain that they clearly are going through, the life-changing suffering that they will have to sustain. And it's really great to see everyone here coming together to make a stand and to show our solidarity, to say loud and clear that we will not tolerate anti-Muslim hatred, we will not tolerate discrimination, we demand that justice is served. It's great that the police have now classified the crime as a hate crime. I understand that they're vigorously trying to find the perpetrator, who is also known to the community in Custom House, and I urge anyone who has any information about that individual to immediately call the police. My final words are simple ones. As mentioned previously, we as Muslims living in this country feel part of Britain, feel British, but over recent years, because of the toxic context and the toxic language that's been promoted by aspects of the media, certain sections of the commentariat, we now have to live in fear. I have a sister-in-law who's a visible Muslim woman. I've heard her experiences of being verbally abused and attacked. My mother, who wears her hijab, has had milk thrown over her car, and as a daughter, as a sister-in-law, as an aunt, I fear every day for the safety of my niece, my nephews, my family relatives, my friends, and my parents, of course, in terms of the climate that they have to endure. And we have all got to remain united and ensure that we fight and eradicate this hatred. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roxana. I've known Roxana for a lot of the time that I've moved into Newham, and she's always taken incredibly open and principled stand over the question of racism and Islamophobia. I'd like to now introduce a speaker from Tower Hamlets, Rubina Khan, yeah, no more.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening to you all. Thank you very much for organising this Stand Up to Racism. This is a very important event and an important solidarity event as well. So from Tower Hamlets I bring a message of unity, a message of solidarity, that we stand together with the people of Newham against acid attacks. We are with you all the way. We want justice for these victims, and I am sure that you have recently heard about the increase of acid attacks in Tower Hamlets as well. One of the most important things that we have understood is that the legislation around acid attacks is not the same legislation associated with knife crime. So together we must campaign for our lawmakers, our MPs and our ministers to change the fact that when you carry an acid substance or a corrosive substance, it must be seen as an offensive weapon. When you carry a knife, it's an offensive weapon. When you carry a substance, it has to be a weapon of an offensive weapon. And the sentencing around using acid must be much stronger, must be stringent, and we must make sure that the police have the equipment, the resources to be able to bring the perpetrators to justice. The police themselves, the firefighters, the emergency services, they themselves are facing a pay freeze. So together, let's make sure that our emergency services get a pay rise this year. Secondly, I wanted to speak a little bit about Islamophobia. I have been a councillor for the last 8 years, and my road in politics has certainly been a very bumpy road. And no doubt many of the people here will know of that particular journey. However, There have been many times when I've been asked very strange questions. So one of the questions I was asked during my time was when I stood as a mayoral candidate in Tower Hamlets in 2015. A young man, a middle-class white man asked me, "Oh, Rubina, you're doing very well. Can you tell me what colour your hair is under your scarf?" So I said it was pink, and he actually believed me, and he said, "Really, is it pink?" I said, "No, it's green." So, that's the only way you can tackle some of the Islamic phobic messages that you get, and interaction as well. One of the most important messages that I would like to give the British Muslim community here: you have so much potential. You are here to stay. You are part of the British society. We have a place here. We are part of British society. We live with our neighbours, whether they are gay, Jews, it doesn't matter. We live together because we are united against Islamophobia, racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, and let's stand together against acid attacks. Thank you.
Just before our next speaker, we have a message of solidarity from Dr. Zulfikar Ali, who is chair of the Alliance of Muslim Associations in Newham. I'm grateful to Newham Stand Up to Racism for inviting me to the vigil this evening. Firstly, I must apologise for my inability to join you due to another long-standing engagement at the House of Commons. I must also thank you for taking the matter of the acid attack seriously and for organising this vigil to support the victims. Newham is a place where all our communities have an excellent relationship. We support each other at times of need, show solidarity and live in peace and harmony. The recent acts of terrorism are condemned unequivocally, as these have led to the loss of innocent lives. Terrorists are terrorists and have no faith. With regard to the acid attacks, this is a serious issue that concerns us all. As chairman of the Alliance of Muslim Associations in Newham, I raised my concerns with the police at our community meeting that we held with the new borough commander last night. Why is it that despite seriousness of this attack, with no confrontation, no provocation, and when the victims alleged this to be a hate crime motivated by racism, that police did not treat this as such? Why did it take a week to declare it as such? Why is it that the investigation is still ongoing and no arrest has been made? The new borough commander recognised this as a hate crime and has promised action to better train his officers. However, we would have thought this is part of normal policing practice and code of conduct. Why is it that the guidelines produced following the Stephen Lawrence inquiry have not been fully implemented and integrated into police operations? There are many unanswered questions that our community needs to have answers. Our meeting last night was useful to highlight our concerns. The borough commander has made a commitment to deal with these issues on a priority basis. We must work together to ensure police and the community work together so that we all feel safe. Once again, thank you for inviting me, and I hope your efforts will go a long way to reassure the victims that they are not alone in this, and that we all stand together in making our community safe. Thanks. I'd now like to introduce Wayman Bennett from our National Stand Up to Racism.
I'm going to thank all the speakers that have spoken before, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm completely unhappy, and I tell you why I'm unhappy. Because I was contacted on the 21st about the acid attacks, and I put out a tweet about the acid attacks and Stand Up to Racism. I was then contacted by the authorities to say, have you got any evidence? Now the problem with that is, I'm not a police officer, I'm not New Scotland Yard, that's not my job. My job is to do Stand Up to Racism. And the question of proof and burden does not lie on the question about when you've been racist, is it racial attacked. If you've ever been racially attacked, they always ask you the question, how did you know that you were racially attacked? Because I'm lying on the ground and someone was kicking me in the head. That was my usual thing. And I didn't think much more about it than that. Why do I have to prove it? And I tell you why it's a problem. Because when it's the other way round, over the question of terrorism or anything like that, you have to prove it the other way. You have to prove you're a good citizen. If the question, I grew up in Stratford, and I remember walking around the streets and people saying, what are you doing round the shopping centre? And I used to tell them, I'm shopping. That's what I was doing. That's why it's called a shopping centre. And the reason why that's not good enough, because that's a generation ago. And I went to, when Mohammed Salim was murdered in Birmingham, I went to Birmingham, and you know what they told me? Don't make trouble. Don't make trouble. Well, we're not making trouble. I tell you what I'm angry about. There's attacks taking place, and there's not enough question about what's going to be done. Because I tell you, if there had been a Muslim that carried out an acid attack, there'd be a manhunt. It'd be on the front page of the Sun, it'd be on the front page of the Mirror, and they'd say, find this person. And I tell you what, if your community hid them and didn't come up with the names of that, your mother would be arrested, your father would be arrested, your cousin would be arrested, until they found that person and said, where are they from? And I want that now. They said they're worried about copycats. That's what they're worried about. I tell you how you get copycats. When you get the cat that's doing the acid attack not caught. We want them caught. We want them brought to justice. This is not about rhetoric. This is about something else that's been happening. There's too much question of Islamophobia being normalised. That's normal. If you put Tommy Robinson on Good Morning TV, do not tell me you're serious about fighting Islamophobia and racism. You're endorsing it. You're endorsing it. Piers Morgan said he put hard questions. How do you put hard questions when your daughter's walking down the street and her hijab's ripped off? Those are not about hard questions. Those are about the questions about how do you live in this society. And we have a problem. We have a serious problem. And the problem, they keep telling us the problem starts from the bottom. The problem doesn't start from the bottom. It starts from the top. Do you remember David Cameron? Robust liberalism. There's a problem with the Muslim community. How can a Prime Minister come out with that filth? Amber Rudd made a speech last year at Tory party conference, which was referred to as a hate crime. These people have got to shut up, because unless they've got real solutions to our problems, stop trying to divide us. Stop trying to blame other people for the mess that they put up. And as for the question of justice, look at Grenfell Tower. That's what those people think of us. They don't care about us. Now, I am for finding out what's happened, but I am for the question of demonstrating, mobilising, and getting our communities together in order to resist. I remember the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. I sat at the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. I remember being told that after this, racism and these things, in terms of that, would be a thing of the past. I'm telling you now, I think the attacks on Muslims are reaching the same scale as they did in the late 90s. And unless something's done about it, it's going to be seen as normal. The question of those marches, why do they let the EDL march? Even this new thing, this Football Lads Alliance, right? Why is a group allowed to march? And actually, some of their leaders come out with filth around Islamophobia, and it's not properly challenged. They're saying they're not seen as a problem. We have to be aware that these people are trying to divide us. And I want to talk about finally about how we stopped the racist in the 1970s. I'll tell you how we did it. We came together as a united community. The National Front used to sell. I grew up off Carpenter's Road on Denison Point. And I'm proud to say we chased the young National Front off the street. And we chased them off the street, and we did it all together. They told us we were children, but I tell you, when there's lots of us, we're not children, we're a group, we're a community, and we've got the collective will to do it. But we have to hold our politicians accountable. That's the reason why I'm glad that Jeremy Corbyn joined us outside Finsbury Park Mosque. But I want to say this, look at the way that mosque has been treated for the last 10 years. That's the problem, constant drip effect of Islamophobia and racism. And that's what we've got to fight. But the final thing I'm going to say is that there's a way of fighting it. When people are angry, let's make sure that they blame the right enemy. If Theresa May gets up and says we're going to have austerity forever, then what she means is blame someone else. That's what she means. And I think it's about time we blamed her. She didn't win the election, so I don't want to hear anything about prevent is normal. The Tories are not normal. Theresa May is not normal. There's something wrong with the government because they don't have any answers, and that's why we've got to fight for change. And I want to say this, Newham can lead the way in fighting for change. I'm proud that I was educated in Newham. I'm proud I went to school in Newham. I'm glad that we all came together. That united spirit can defeat racism, but it can also fight for better change for society, which we're not so divided on. So thank you very much for everybody coming out. Thank you.
We've got a message of support and a couple more speakers, but one thing we wanted to do today was just hold a minute's silence in reflection, in solidarity with Resham, Jamil and all other victims of hate crime. So if we could just keep our phones on silent and just have a minute's silence, please. Okay, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to announce our next speaker, who is Lynn Brown, our local MB from Newham.
Thank you. And I was just looking for Roxana because I thought she might have a pair of glasses she could lend me. She was here earlier, I know, and I've left mine in the car somewhere, on my way to somewhere else. So that's going to make the next two speeches this evening really helpful because I'm not going to be able to read those either. Thank you. Oh, hello. Can I first of all thank you all for inviting me here tonight. It's a really sad occasion. The recent crime using noxious substances in the streets of Newham has been truly, absolutely shocking. My heart goes out to the victims and the families and their friends and to the whole community now that is far more anxious than it was. It is worried about what these attacks presage and whether or not there are going to be further attacks of this nature on our streets. The photos of Resham and Jamil before and after the attacks bring home the truly horrifying nature of this event. The climate of fear resulting from these attacks also should be recognised as part of the horror that comes with something like this. And it is truly horrifying to see Islamophobic attacks increasing in the wake of the London Bridge terror attack. I understand that since the 6th of June, there's been more than 40% racist incidents in an average day, and 50% with Islamophobic motivation, and that can't be helpful at all. Keep calm, it's only Islam. I love it. I think that we have to have an absolute zero tolerance to hate crime in our communities. We must make sure that every single crime that is committed from hatred, from Islamophobia, from racism, is reported as such to our police, and that action is taken against the perpetrators with the biggest force of the law. We must make sure that race attacks, Islamophobic attacks, are not simply recorded as a random attack by somebody on the street. There's a motive for it, and we must call that motive out, and we must make sure that we stand together against it. Violent crimes using acid as a weapon have become far too common. But to be honest, in the main, they are used as a form of domestic violence, and they are also used as revenge attacks or as a different way of attacking one's enemy if one is in a gang, because it is easier to attack with acid or a substance like that than it is for a knife, because with a knife you get caught on the streets, you get caught with knife arches, and actually when we look at what is happening with noxious substances, it is because people are no longer carrying knives. But that doesn't mean to say that we should sit back and take this. Stephen and I, Stephen Timms, the MP for West East Ham, and I will be taking to Parliament a bill in the autumn looking at what more we should be doing to stop acid and noxious substance attacks. What else is it that we should be adding to our law? And one of the things that I want to see is I want to see them counted, because at the moment we're not counting those attacks that are made by acid. They are simply a GBH, grievous bodily harm. They are an assault, but they don't say that they're an assault with a weapon that is that noxious substance. And I think that's why we don't know what is happening on our streets as much as we should do. And one of the reasons why I'm very keen to be able to create evidence for us so that we can take this issue forward. Stephen and I met on Friday with a local youth charity, and one of the things that we're going to be doing is creating a conference in September to talk about the rising nature of youth violence and gang violence in our streets, knife crime particularly, but also noxious substances. And we will be listening to members of the communities, we'll be listening to our police forces, we'll be listening to our social workers and our youth workers to find out what they think that we should be doing. I always remember going and watching a kiddie. Okay, he was 25, so maybe not a kiddie anymore, but he had been to prison for knife crime. And he walked into a classroom in a school near us, and he talked to the young people there, and he told them that he didn't mean to hurt anybody, really. He stabbed somebody in the leg because he thought that by stabbing somebody in the leg, it wouldn't be as dangerous as stabbing somebody in the chest and catching a vital organ. And he had tears as he was telling these children that the guy he stabbed died because he caught an artery. And those young people were really moved by what he was saying. We need to take those kind of messages into our schools so that young people can make up their own minds about what they want to do and who they want to be, and to let them to know that to carry any weapon isn't safe for them, and it certainly isn't going to improve their lives in any way. But tonight, my concern is to be here in unity against far-right hate crime, against racist and Islamophobic attacks, and Islamophobic and racist crime, and to show solidarity with those who have been attacked, and to pledge to work to be part of a solution to this pernicious racism from a tiny part, a tiny, tiny, tiny part of this community. This community doesn't have racist attacks. This community saw that kind of far-right organisation off well and truly in the 1980s and 90s, and we're not going to stand by and watch that happen again. Together we are strong, and together we can defeat it. And my last words are to the organisers of this event to say thank you so very much for bringing us together and allowing us to show solidarity with those victims and being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Lynn. Thank you very much. I just want to call Naila back, who's going to read a message from LGBTQ against Islamophobia of solidarity to the vigil tonight.
Hi, and I said earlier about how, you know, we are a community regardless to our religion, gender, or anything else, young, old, we are a community. And with that in mind, I'd like to read a message of support from LGBT Against Islamophobia. LGBT Against Islamophobia would like to express our outrage and sorrow at the acid attack on Resham Khan and Jamil Mukhtar. This horrific act of hatred, together with the dreadful assault by the driver of the white van on a group of the faithful at the mosque in Finsbury Park, should be treated as terrorism and the perpetrators prosecuted as terrorists. We extend our heartfelt support support for all Muslims who feel threatened and abused on the streets of Britain. And we will do all we can to stop this ideological, physical campaign of hate and terror. LGBT Against Islamophobia is a network of people of all sexualities and gender identities from all backgrounds and religions, and of no religion. Our group was set up in 2015 when the British state and the far-right press began in earnest to divide our communities by repeating a lie. This lie claimed that all Muslims are opposed to LGBT people and LGBT rights. We do not accept or believe that any one religion has a monopoly on prejudice, whether that takes the form of homophobia, biphobia or transphobia. Only this week, two prominent Christians stated their opposition to same-sex marriage. Margaret Thatcher's ex-cabinet member Norman Tebbit and German Premier Angela Merkel each spouted their bigoted opposition to marriage between loving couples who happen to be of the same sex. Meanwhile, all of the 6 Muslim members of parliament in Germany voted for the same-sex marriage law. We applaud and thank them. We are sorry we cannot be here tonight, but we send greetings to everyone, and especially Risham and Jamil. We hope they heal swiftly and receive all the support they need, and we pledge our support to them in their fight for justice. Our message is no justice, no peace. Thank you very much.
I'm going to take a NUT and then you. I'd really like to introduce, there's already been referenced by our speakers to the central importance of young people in our community. I'm going to introduce Ian Hale, who's not so young, but he is the Assistant Secretary of the National Union of Teachers in Newham, and he'd like to say a few words.
Thank you. What an outrageous thing to happen. 2 young people scarred for life. For what reason? The colour of their skin, their religion. Teachers have fought against racism for years. The National Union of Teachers has an award called the Blair Peach Award. Blair was killed fighting the fascists. The NUT stand in solidarity. We will do everything in our power to support our community, the children we teach, your children.
Thanks very much. I'd like to introduce Hatik Malik from Luton, who's come tonight in solidarity.
Hello everybody, thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to address everyone in 2 capacities. One as a Muslim and then as a British person. Now as a Muslim, it gladdens my heart a lot to see a lot of people here today from that community. But over the last few days and last few weeks, we're having a lot of conversations with people up and down the country. And one thing that people keep saying is that the Muslims only come out for justice when it's something that threatens them. And that, to be honest with you, I can't even deny myself, and it's quite sad. Because even from an Islamic perspective, as a Muslim, it is a fard, a duty on us to stand for justice, not for ourselves, but for everyone. If we see injustice happening over there, of a non-Muslim, no matter what race they are, whatever, you as a Muslim should be standing for justice. It shouldn't just be when you're threatened. And what I'm saying here is this should be used as a catalyst for you, as a mobilization, as an awakening, as a rising up for standing against all discrimination, all hate, standing for justice, because that's what you're really supposed to be part of. Okay? Now, as a British person, it saddens me to see these sort of attacks, because as far as I'm concerned, British values are not about everyone talking the same, walking the same, like these prevent agendas want you to believe. It's about diversity, it's about multiculturalism. That's what being British is about. And the people who do these attacks are doing these attacks contrary to British values, against diversity, against multiculturalism. And we stand against that shoulder to shoulder. But enough about the talking. What's the action plan going forward? What are we going to do next? What we're going to do next is this. Every time you think you're a victim of hate crime is race, religion, sex, anything, you need to report it to the police as that. You need to have it logged as that, so then we can then monitor that and see how effective the policing is. More often than not, we see cover-ups. we see situations, like it or not, where even the police won't even take a report. And if they do, they'll categorize it as something lower than it should be. If that happens, how is it properly investigated? How is it properly affected? So you as citizens need to ensure that when you report a matter, it's reported properly. And if the police try to get away with not taking that report, come to people like me or other people in the community, and we will make sure that that hate crime is recorded as a hate crime. Okay? Not as a GBH or an ABH or pushing a shovel and a fray. No, hate crime is hate crime, and we stand against it. So, just to sum up, what is our position? NJNP, no justice, no peace. NJNP, no justice, no peace. Say it again. NJNP.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Atiq. I want to start to bring this vigil to a close. I'd like to say thank you again to every single one of you who has come here tonight. Please, when you go back to your workmates, your neighbours, your friends, say something about tonight, not as an end in itself, but the beginning of something. Because this threat we face, unfortunately, is not going to just disappear by itself. And as speakers have said, it is being fed by Islamophobic hate and suspicion narratives in the mass media and elsewhere, by people like Melanie Phillips, like Katie Hopkins and others, who I would only describe, to be honest, as hate preachers. And I think we need to preach a different message. One of solidarity, one of unity, one of standing against every manifestation of hate, of racism and of Islamophobia. But more than that, it's not only about speaking, it's about mobilizing. We should go into our workplaces and our colleges, sign people up, form stand up to racism groups that we can take on and challenge, not just in Newham, not just here outside the station, but where we work, where we live, where we study, where we go to our faith, to observe our faith, whatever that might be. And we need to start to set an example across the country. I was asked by a reporter before this vigil started, why do you think Newham seems to be targeted in this way? And I've been asked that question several times. My answer was this: Newham has the second highest Muslim population in the country. It is the second most diverse community of any borough in the country. And therefore it is a target for people who hate. And that hate is being fed by those in the media who target communities like ours and portray it in the most disgusting, untrue and filthy ways. And we have to roll that back and show there's mass numbers everywhere throughout our communities and society to take this on. I would just remind people who might not have been here earlier, we have 2 books over here which are there for anyone who wants to sign and put a message to Resham and Jamil, which Nyla will take to Manchester in order to give to them personally. So please, if you would like to sign a message, please do that. Please also, finally, do look up Newham Stand Up to Racism. We have a Facebook page and a Twitter. I ask you to go to those, not in order to, big us up as a group, but because we genuinely want to mobilize the widest and biggest possible unity and force in Newham, and we want as many people from all different organisations and backgrounds to be part of the movement here in Newham, to take on Islamophobia, to take on racism, to take on the far right, and show what real united solidarity in a community is about. Thank you very much indeed.
October conference.
Oh, do you want
Okay. Can I just quickly say, as an anti-racist campaigner, but also as a Muslim woman that's actually been attacked on the streets of London, I just want to say thank you everybody for coming out and standing in solidarity, because I am absolutely fully aware that this will help those that have been attacked. It is very important. But as well as being here today, as Rob has just said, we have to build the biggest anti-racist movement possible. We have to be in a position where those that have hatred within them are scared to express it. They're scared to come out on the streets, they're scared to use that language, and actually, because we're the majority. That's what we need to get to. We want them to go away and hide under some rock somewhere. And the only way we're going to do that is to build a massive anti-racist movement. And this today is a start of that. It's absolutely fantastic that people have come out today. And I do hope that you all do write a little, even if it's a little, message of support to the family, because I think they would appreciate it. But also, I'd like to join Stand Up to Racism. There are joining forms on the stall over there. There are also Stand Up to Racism activists handing those forms out. And I don't just say that because we want lots of members, but actually we need to get organised. We need to know that when something happens, there are people that we can reach out to who will take to the streets, who will show support and show solidarity, and will take action, because that's what today is about. Beating the Racist is about taking action. It's not about sitting at your keyboard. It's about coming out on the streets, getting organised. So please join Stand Up to Racism. If you're part of a union, take it back to your trade union movement. Get the motions passed in your union. If you're part of a workplace, set up a Stand Up to Racism workplace. I mean, I was talking at a meeting only yesterday in Sheffield, and there was an NUJ member, National Union of Journalists, and he said that they had set up Stand Up to Racism NUJ group. That's the kind of thing we need to see to beat the racists. So please get involved, give us your details so that we can let you know what happens next. There will also be a conference taking place in the centre of London in October. We'd like as many people from here to come to that, because we want as many people to be involved in talking about how we get organised, to be involved in that organisation, to talk about the ideas of what we can do both locally and nationally, because that's what we're going to need. As many people from up and down the country coming together so that we are the majority and we can act when needed. So please, thank you very much, but let's get involved, let's get organised, give us your details, and let's keep this movement building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to add a few more points, brilliant points you've just raised. I was absolutely outraged by the attack that I've heard. A young woman, 24 years old, 21 years old, sorry. She was celebrating her birthday. She had nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism. She's never supported terrorism. So why is she the victim of such an attack? But do you know what I was more outraged with? With the Muslim community's response. Where are our community leaders? How many imams are there in Newham? Tell me this, how many community leaders are there in Newham? Why is it that whenever there's a racist attack committed by people claiming to be Muslim, we have our leaders coming out saying, you know, we have to apologize for this? Why should we apologize? Why should we accommodate why should we accommodate the bigoted racist views that they're trying to perpetuate about our religion? And when there's a Muslim victim of an attack, the terrorist attack at Finsbury Park, various examples, we're silent. So all I'll say is, group together, join us, there is an alternative, we can change this, and the racists, they will only approach our towns, they will only attack our people when they think they can get away with it.
Thanks very much. The only thing I'd like to say is I come from a Jewish background. Both my mother and father were Jewish. My mother fled Hungary before the Holocaust. And my father stood up to the black shirts and mostly as one of the many who did at Olympia. And he worked here for some time in the East End. I have to say it was true then for the Jewish community as it is sometimes in the Muslim community, that people are under fear. Whether a leading figure or an ordinary Muslim woman. And actually I don't think that's where we should point the finger. I think we need to keep our finger pointed at those who instill that fear. Because that's what they want to do. They want us to duck, not to stand together, to keep quiet, and they're the ones who are really responsible. The way we get people to speak out is to give people confidence by standing together in numbers, and I thank you very much for what you've done here today to begin to do that. let's go away and build that anti-racist movement, build that solidarity, and isolate the racist filth who did what they did, who were responsible for what happened to Rashim and Jamil over a week ago. Thank you very much, everyone, and I hope that you have a reflective but positive evening. Thank you very much.